Sorry. Oop.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Apex Vaulting Podcast. Super excited about today's episode. I know a lot of things are going on. There's probably pole vault coaches out there wondering, will they be able to go back to practice? Are we going to be able to open up? A lot of different situations going out there, and there's a bunch of topics that I want to go over. We have Matt Berry from PV Atlanta with us today. I'm so grateful for him to come on, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, but I kind of just spoke to Matt. I kind of had this thought. I just finished my morning workout, and one of the things that I feel like not enough coaches, not enough athletes understand, let's say most people are not going to end up becoming Olympic athletes, but even at that level, if you want to be a championship caliber type of athlete, one of the things enough people don't talk about is, pushing the limits. How do you build physical and mental toughness? I think some people don't understand the idea of, we add stress to the equation mentally and physically, because if you add the right amount of stress, you adapt and you become stronger. Too much stress, you crumble. Not enough stress, there's no changes and you'll get worse. But I feel like that's an idea, and Matt, I'd love to hear your perspective, because being that you're an educator too, and also a pole vault coach, I feel like people forget that's the whole point of training. We're trying to push an individual's limits. And I know for me, one of the things that I've always been super proud of is, and sometimes, you have athletes fighting you, kicking and screaming about this, but it's like you get them to push the limits, and they are better prepared for life in the future. And especially during this point of coronavirus, I feel like people who have never pushed their limits, they're probably really struggling during this time period where a lot of things are taken away from them and they have huge obstacles ahead of them.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm Matt Berry. I'm the head assistant coach at Pole Vault Atlanta down here in obviously Atlanta, Georgia. We come from a club of between 60 and 70 kids on the club team. We work with well over 200 athletes a year from a practice basis. Head coach is Hal Fairbanks. He's an educator. He was an athletic director and educator for more than 30 years. I'm in education. This is my 15th year in education, teaching and coaching. And actually the way we set our system up and the way we set everything up is through the educational lens. When you come to practice, it's a class. So it's basically a classroom. There's class etiquette, there are rules, there are expectations. And so going, when you attend practice, you're in class. I mean, that's really what it is. It's not you're showing up, you're just working out, and then you're leaving. It's, okay, there are lessons to everything you have to do. You have to understand why X leads to Y, why Y leads to Z, and where the mistakes are made along the way. I do think that the kids that have been challenged the least, where things have come very easy to them, are the ones that are struggling the most. And especially right now, the kids that are getting good. And I mean, whatever you want to define your elite athlete is, the elites are the ones that are feeling the most pressure and are the most stressed out and are struggling to cope with this the most.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to bring up for people that are not familiar with your club. I mean, I don't remember exactly what year, but gosh, it was probably close to 8 years ago. I remember seeing you guys at high school nationals a lot. I mean, you guys always have a huge crew. You guys do a phenomenal job. There's even obviously some things that I want to talk later in the podcast about technique-wise and stuff like that, and what you guys think brings you so much success. But I think you bring up a great point. The people who have success early on and they're kind of getting it very easily, they are going to struggle during this time. And I think even being a more top-tier athlete at this point going into coronavirus, where maybe you were expecting to go to high school nationals, you're trying to get a scholarship, you might be struggling with the mental side of it right now. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What do you say to your athletes in that position?
That's awesome. So my phone's been ringing off the hook ever since this happened. Like how Coach and I were on the way to the airport for New Balance with 7 kids, 3 pole bags. We were literally going to the Atlanta airport to go up to New Balance. And when we saw everything was canceling, we realized, okay, this is a lot bigger than simply a weekend's going to be missed. We know we're going to be missing more than this weekend.
Right.
From that point on, our seniors pretty much thought about it from the sense, okay, this is just a temporary delay in our senior season. This is unfortunate. We're going to lose a couple of weeks. Our juniors were thinking, oh, this was kind of like, all right, I thought I was going to be getting some competition, some more practice to get those marks to start getting the looks at from the colleges. And these are, again, more of our elite athletes. And then the sophomores and freshmen, they're affected, but not as much because they're still very young. Some of them are still trying to grasp the concept of, am I going to take this to the next level beyond a varsity high school perspective? And then eighth graders, I'm going to toot our horn a little bit. I had an 11'6" eighth grade boy and a 10'6" eighth grade girl and a 10-foot girl on the way. And they were ready to just dominate their eighth grade seasons. And this was in January, they had these marks going into the season. And so, like, how do you approach a child who's developing mentally to understand that this is a small window in time and you're still going to have 4 years of high school? So we've had to approach this a lot of different ways. I think the hardest group of kids that we've had to address this with, honestly, it's the juniors. Because our juniors are the ones that are taking it the hardest. And they're actually the ones who are going out and sort of training on their own in places they probably shouldn't, but we don't know about it. And we find out later. They're the ones who were thinking, oh man, but how am I going to get colleges to look at me if I don't have the marks? And my best mark was of October of my junior year. And I never even got a junior year spring season to get that mark. So reeling the kids in and saying, you're not the only one affected by this. Every single kid across the country is affected by this. There isn't a single club. There isn't a single coach. There isn't a single athlete that is an exception to this. And if you have
so again, sorry to interrupt you, but
no, please interrupt all you want.
I mean, even for those kids who are like, well, I know so-and-so is practicing in a backyard right now or something, they're still not going to competition. They're still not going to be going to a state meet or a national meet. Like, again, like you said, you're in the same boat. The other thing too, and I know during this time period, a lot of people are talking about, being able to adapt or pivot. And one of the things that I feel like very strongly about our sport, I think, unfortunately, a lot of people have sold our sport in this fashion. They go, hey, mom and dad, your son or daughter can get a scholarship if they pole vault. And I think that's always been such a fallacy and it's such a bad way to promote our sport because, one, you and I both know, I mean, we've been doing this long enough. Most kids are not going to get a scholarship. Maybe some kids will even be lucky it'll get them a foot in the door at a college. But by and large, if our sport was as popular as we would like it to be, most people are not going to get a scholarship. There's just not that many scholarship opportunities. I think the way that people need to start really presenting our sport is that this is what I truly believe, a great total body workout. It's also mentally challenging, not just physically challenging. And it's something that you could do for years and years and years. And we need to start to think about promoting it in that fashion and promoting it as like a lifelong sport that you can enjoy for many, many years. I see us more on par. And I know I always bring this up, but we're more like a martial arts. There is the skill part that you have to master while you are also mastering your body, and you have to balance both of those, which again, I think those are lifelong lessons, healthy mind, healthy body, that works in conjunction. And I think if we can start to promote our sport more in that fashion, we'll be way better off,
Yeah. I think I cannot speak on behalf of every club coach and every track athlete or event, but I do think that we at some point think to ourselves, how can we get these children an academic athletic opportunity in high school to be successful that may set them up for the next level to give them the ability? Is that going to happen for all these kids? Absolutely not. It's not the way it's going to be. Sorry. But what you just said and what I firmly believe is, if you're going to commit to a club sport, you have to have time management. You have to have dedication. You have to understand what failure is going to be like, and you have to understand how to be resilient to failure. You then have to be able to goal set. You then have to create work ethic. We're teaching, these are lifelong skills that you apply in the work environment. And it just happens to be that the sport we coach is the most technical sport of track and field. And it takes it takes time. You don't become good at the pole vault overnight. You don't become a state champion in a month. If you do, that's great. But it's not that way. And so if what I think we are seeing in a trend from USA Track and Field's messages of things being canceled and postponed, from NSAF, from GHSA, which is Georgia High School, our governing body, and even from just like all-comer track, from our local Atlanta Track Club and stuff, is that Atlanta Track Club is sending a great message. We're not just trying to promote racing so you can get a time. We're trying to promote the healthy lifestyle of athletics, and you can still run on your own. And I think what we're seeing is some pretty fun, I guess, virtual competitions with some kids who are doing this mile challenge and some other kids out there. And we see the pole vault challenges by Mondo and Sam and Renal and Katie Najat, who's here in Atlanta, and Katerina Stefandini and Newman. I mean, we see that they're promoting the sport, and that's what we should be promoting. But, not every kid has a pole vault pit in their backyard. We have kids that we have a kid, in terms of talking about dedication, we have a kid who drives 2 hours one way, and he doesn't miss practice. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. And he's one who's gone from 11.6 to 14, from 11.6 to 15.4 in a matter of a couple months. Yeah. And he's a junior. And so he's thinking to himself, how am I getting this for the next level? Again, what we also need to do is we need to teach patience, and we need to teach more of the lesson of, again, everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's facing the same struggles. So we need to think more along the lines of, this is an outlet too. It's not just the make all be all that you're going to get into college and do this. Would you like to? Yes. And there are many paths to doing it. But we absolutely need to promote that this is supposed to be a healthy athletic outlet that can teach you many life skills, athletic and personal and professional. Right. So, the kids who drive an hour and a half, who come to practice, versus the kids who sit at home and they literally build whatever pull-up bar systems they have in their backyard. Yeah. It teaches them, those are important, valuable lessons.
No, I think, it's funny just thinking about what you're saying and building stuff in your backyard and stuff. I think that the kids that go to a pole vaulting club a lot of times, because they have to be so dedicated, and like you said, you have people that are driving 2 hours to practice, those are the people right now that are figuring something out with what they have. They're figuring out what they can do at home. I know even for us, we put out a workout video that first week that things closed down because of coronavirus, to give people some ideas. But it's amazing when I get videos or texts from athletes now who have used that as a springboard and built off of that. Yeah. The other thing that I was thinking about when you were saying, I think every pole vault club, we've all had someone that's driven 2 hours to come to club. My dream is one day that we're popular enough that doesn't happen anymore, that nobody has to drive 2 hours to go to practice. Right. One of the things that we talked about before we even started the podcast, can you talk more about, one, your education background and how you think that helps you? And then you talked about the head coach also, who is an athletic director, how that helps you guys as coaches, that you have that education background,
Yeah. So I love that question, especially because I love being an educator. I think of myself as a teacher than a coach. So I just think the coaching is a blessing. I firmly operate is every practice, there's a lesson plan. Here's what we've got written on the whiteboard. We've got our 3 tracks. We've got our beginner, intermediate, elite tracks. We've got the principles of, these are the drills you do every single day. You do your 20-20 step drills. You do your goose steps. You do your jump hits. You do your walking plant drills. You do those. It's the same concept as thinking about it in the classroom. Is we always have to go over the directions, whether you think you know them or not, because you never know when a word is going to change. Children have been going over directions for reading and writing and for arithmetic. They've been going over directions with educators since the moment they entered school. Right. And as you've gotten older, the language of the directions have changed. The words have changed. The directions become harder. Sometimes the directions include multifaceted thinking. And so that's the same thing in athletics. Just because you go to practice every single day, that doesn't necessarily mean you go through the motions. That's one of the things that I hate about saying at practice is, if you go through the motions, then you're going to go through the motion results. It's
Right.
it's the athletes that are going to say, okay, I want to be the best at the 2020s. I want to do it perfect. My plant, I want it to be the best. So I'm going to practice this drill. My run, I'm going to practice this drill and master it. And I always use the example from an athletic perspective is LeBron James didn't come out of the womb and dunk.
Right.
He did practice layups. The kid, I'm sure, missed easy layups in games when he was younger.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure NBA athletes still do layup lines before games.
Yep.
LeBron James is not doing a layup before a game because he's like, I got to remember how to do a layup. No, it's muscle memory and it's warm-up routine. And it's
Right.
routine that provides that the below the tip iceberg. We see him dunk, but what we also see him warm up, but we've got to think about preparation going to the arena, preparation when he wakes up in the morning, preparation at breakfast time. That goes back to then sleep habits, which then, I mean, it's a long train here. It's not one thing.
Right.
And from an educator perspective is, all right, guys, you will be successful at some point. You will fail more than you're going to be successful at one period of time. That period of time could be weeks. It could be months. It could be just days, but that's expected. And so you have to lay it out. And we try to lay it out that we all have certain phrases and sayings that we live by. And those are what we call our directions as an educator. That's what we live by. And that's what we believe in.
Yeah, I think process and procedure is so important. I know, again, we were talking about this before the podcast started, but I think a lot of people who sometimes, start coaching when they don't have an education background, they want to get to the meat of the sport, right? Like, let's get jumping, but you have to have that process and procedure. And I always tell people, going back to what you said, if you just go through the motions of those beginning steps of practice, like I always tell people, like, okay, you're doing a planting drill, you're just doing pole drops. If you fall asleep during that time, you didn't get any better. There has to be a purpose to that, and even more so, the way you did pole drops day one of your first pole vaulting practice to year 5, so different. There's so many layers to even the basic drills where it's like, okay, as a beginner, you've mastered the planting drill. Well, now you have to master it in that intermediate level, then expert, right? It's like you have to keep building off of these. You don't just one day, it's I'm at day 10 at PV Atlanta and I'm like, okay, I mastered these drills. I don't have to do them. No, there's always a refinement.
Right. I think we also have to consider this too, is like a child who masters the drill in 9th grade physically and physiologically grows older and develops and changes between
Right.
9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. So you look at a kid, we've got a girl, she's a 13-7 jumper.
Mhm.
She's a stud. I mean, physically right now as a junior in high school, she's a monster. And I say it in a good way, not like, she's a
No,
monster.
yeah.
She was a little pixie stick in 7th grade. So
Right.
yeah, she probably, when she was doing her plant drills in 7th grade, mentally, she was thinking about it differently and physically she was doing it differently than the way she is now.
Right.
It's a different level now. So
Right.
you can't going through the motions and just being okay at being marginal or being okay with being good. Why would you want to settle for just being good when you can emulate the best? I'm gonna piggyback off that with this example. One of the things, our kids, they got to go to the sand pit. That's the way it is. It's the law. It's the way our class is set up.
Right.
Well, I don't want to go to the sand. Then when I show you the video of beginner to Bubka, and you see Yelena Zimbayova holding on to a 14-foot pole or a 15-foot pole, actually be a 14 or 14-7, and she's 4-step bracing in the sand pit with at least a 13-foot grip.
Right.
I'm sorry, if she's doing that, we're trying to emulate that.
Right.
She is not above going to the sand pit. She is not above doing her 2020 and jump drills.
Right.
Neither are you. No one is.
Right. I don't know if you ever heard of Westside Barbell. They're a powerlifting gym in Ohio.
Okay.
But one of the things they always talk about at that gym, they have so many talented powerlifters. I think Louis Simmons has coached more 1,000-pound squatters than any other person on the planet. And one of the things they always say is like, well, okay, so let's say you come in there and you're a 700-pound squatter And Matt, you're an 800-pound squatter. I want to be an 800-pound squatter. Well, I look at what you do with other exercises that aren't the squat. So if you like can leg press X number of pounds, or if you can hamstring curl X number of pounds, whatever, I have to do that too. So like you said, it's like, oh, you want to jump as high as Yelena Zimbaeva? Well, then you need to do what she does in the sand pit. You know, there are other, it's not just that 16-7 jump that just magically happens. There are other exercises, drills, processes, and procedures that you have to emulate. I mean, I remember one time I had a 12-4 girl in Division III. She was a national qualifier. And I remember one of the things that she one time told me, she was kind of complaining about other athletes. And she's like, well, you know, she's like, God damn, if you want to be an elite vaulter, you should at least try to look like one. You know, and I laughed. I'm like, well,
if it looks good, it is good.
Yeah, there's something to that, right? It's like you have to train that way. You have to make your body become that level, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I also think in terms of the way approaching practice from the education standpoint is the word I think we don't like to use in athletics, but it's important, is discipline.
Yeah.
And discipline doesn't always have to be negative.
Right.
Learning a discipline is something important. Knowing when is the right time to disagree vocally versus privately, you know, publicly versus privately.
Right.
And also, you know, you run through 5 times. Are you going to throw the pole? You're going to throw the pole down? You're going to snap something? What are you going to do? How are you going to handle it? Or are you going to say, hold on. All right, coach or whomever, this is not working. Okay. Since you've recognized the problem. Now we need to solve it. Now we need to find all the different variables. Why do you feel like you were running through?
Right.
Well, how high are you holding? Where are you running from? Are you wearing spikes in your flats? What'd you eat today? The smallest things. Is your energy level up or down?
Yeah. Are you up to like already like 35 jumps in a practice session and maybe it's time to shut it down, you know?
Right. The variables are infinite in the pole vault, and we are blessed that we can see world records broken all the time. And, you know, but one of the things we don't see is I guess I'll use Mondo as the example because he's just so beloved by everyone, and as he should be. We've seen all the YouTube videos of him being a prodigy, of being a phenom.
Right.
I want to see all the videos of his run-throughs, of his horrible practices, of the no heights, of the blowing through a pole and knocking the bar on the way up. Like, where are all those? They're not out there because we don't want to glorify and highlight that. Not because we don't want to show our faults, but because, well, we don't want to emulate that.
Right.
And so, but it doesn't mean it's going away. It doesn't mean it's not there. You know, it doesn't mean that he has not failed before. So we need to also understand that we're also looking at, and we as coaches are doing this right now, is we're looking at competitions and we're looking at practices and we're looking what other kids are doing through this rose-colored glass lens. Oh man, this kid just jumped 14.6 down there in whateverville at practice. Okay, how many jumps did it take for them to do that?
Right.
We didn't see that part. I'm not neglecting that the 14.6 happened. Good job, applause.
Right.
What did it take to get there?
Right.
That's what I'm trying to that's what I want our kids to understand this.
Well, I know even, I guess this is a good segue. I DM'd you, hey, would you like to do the podcast? You commented on the one post I made about The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, you know, and I think what I really liked about that kind of documentary series was they weren't just showing all the best parts of Michael Jordan. They were showing the tough times, the injuries, practices, you know, how he sometimes maybe even handled practice poorly and how he bounced back from that. Like I even like the one part about him, you know, punching Steve Kerr at practice.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people kind of like look at that and say like, oh, see, Michael Jordan's terrible. But here's the thing. Yes, he acted poorly, but he saw that. He spoke to his coach, apologized to the coach, and then also called his teammate and apologized to his teammate. He tried to mend that. And I think that's the thing that I saw is so important is like we did see the highs and lows just in that one little moment with Michael Jordan. And we don't often get to see that in the pole vault. And I don't know why, but it seems like in the track world, we never want to talk about the negatives. We only talk about the positives, but then we're not really seeing the truth, you know?
Yeah, so it's kind of like this too. Is we don't separate our kids. We have different groups. Like I guess you want to call them like your beginner, intermediate, elite. But we all practice at the same time, and there is very big reason for this. We had a boy. He was a knucklehead, but we loved him. He's got our club record, 16.6 and a half.
Okay.
The year before, he was a 15.9er. The year before, he jumped 15 something. And then, but the first year he was there, it was like a 12-foot vaulter at best. Okay. And it was the concept of emulate the best. And It was pull out the DVD player, watch the beginner to Bubka video. These are the drills they're doing. He becomes better. He becomes our best vaulter. What he doesn't realize is that other kids that are on the runway and on the other two pits look at him and go, I want to be like that. I want to jump that high. I want to get that good. What do I have to do? He's watching that video with coach. Do I need to watch that video with coach? He's doing this drill and he does it this way. Do I need to fix that? So one of the things that I think we, in the pole vault especially, if you're at practice and you're there and you simply socialize before and after your jumps, and then you get on the runway and jump, and then you're done and you socialize again, if you're doing that, you have lost practice. If you're the athlete at practice who takes a jump and then seeks out instruction or guidance or says, did you catch my mid mark? Or did you see where I took off from? Or, did coach, what did you think about that jump? And then you watch 3 other kids jump as well. Right. You're actually taking more from practice than your teammates who are there socializing in between jumps. And there are kids on the team, they understand this. They watch every little thing. Oh, I'm on the 14.125 and I'm holding it 12.7. How is that the 30? Yeah, it's a 30. How stiff is the 30 versus the 25? Right. I mean, well, right then and there, you've tried to better yourself as an athlete.
No, 100%. And I think something that, and look, I mean, you tell me what you think, but I think in education sometimes and track, we sometimes look down at competition. We don't want to compete, let's be really nice and friendly and, but I think competition is huge. I mean, at my club, we have a leaderboard of all our records, lifting, pole vault records, and it's not just PR. We put a push record, class record, and then a lot of times, when the kids are, we do a little bit of like active stretching for like about 5 minutes, and that's where I like to do sometimes stuff like this. I'd be like, hey, Tommy, did you hear about what Steve did last practice? He wrapped this bungee. Or Sally, did you hear about Jen? Jen just squatted such and such. And I'm actively doing this because I'm letting them know, like, hey, that kid that you thought maybe was far away from your level? They're catching up, And competition is a driver because you have to realize in life, the minute you go to sleep, and again, I love this as a life lesson. If you think that you get a job, you get a promotion, and now you can just kick back and relax, you're going to lose that promotion. Someone else is going to get pushed up. You might get fired. I mean, you even see it in relationships. I see it all the time. People get together and then they fall asleep, instead of, working on the relationship. Or even during this time with coronavirus, I'm sure you're hearing about this. I know I'm helping, my brother and sister-in-law with my nephews. They know what it's like to teach little kids, and it's like, this has to be fostered and worked on every single day, and that's why I like competition, because life is competitive, every single day. And it's like, how are you going to handle that competition? Are you going to get scared? Are you going to run away from competition? Are you going to get upset? Or are you going to start to strategize and go, okay, what's my next move? What can I do better? Maybe like you said, maybe I'm socializing too much at practice. I'm not focusing, or maybe I've been lackadaisical about workouts, or, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this. We all love the drills that we're good at, right? Absolutely. I love doing the drill where after I take the jump, Coach Matt is like, Bronco, awesome. Everybody like Bronco. But as soon as you change the drill to the one that I hate, I'm like, forget this.
That's how you find out how good or bad you are at the sport. When you figure out the drill you're the worst at, and then you're the worst one at it, and you have to get better. Yeah. Our push-off drill is kind of like our favorite drill competition-wise between the kids.
Yeah.
because some kids are really good at it, but they don't get in the position in their jumps yet at the push off.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of our kids are really, really good vaulters, and they are horrible at the push off drill.
Yeah.
We have a 15-foot,
When you say push off drill, can you describe it for a second so people?
So yeah, so imagine, so think about stairs.
Mhm.
So stairs, okay. Now we've got it's a set of 2 stairs, a lower one and a higher one, and it's you run up to the box. It's you're looking at about 20 inches by 15 inches, 20 inches in depth,
Okay.
and it's about 2.5 feet tall,
Okay.
and it's just 2 steps. And what the kids have to do is they run up and they have to push off with one hand, and then they push and they leave with their top hand.
Okay.
So it's not just a round off drill. And if you think about it, gymnasts and cheerleaders are the worst at this when they start, because they're used to doing round offs one direction and pushing off with their bottom hand, not their top hand in the pole vault.
Mm-hmm.
So the gymnasts, like some of them are really good because they have that awareness of their body, but it's the complete opposite push off.
Right.
And so what the kids do, we have a crossbar set, and it's at a height, and they have to push off and go over the crossbar with the, get rid of the bottom hand, bring it to the chest, and get rid of the top hand. And
Yeah.
some of the kids are good at getting their legs straight. Some kids, their legs are all over the place. Some of them go over sideways.
Right.
I mean, it'd blow your mind to see some of the stuff they do.
Mm-hmm.
We have a 16-foot junior, and he's horrible at the push-off drill.
Mm-hmm.
But he made 16.2, gripping at 13.9.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
his push-off is good,
Mm-hmm.
but the push-off drill is not his strong drill. It
Right.
helps that he's a monster football player and he's super strong,
Yeah.
and he's, a really good athlete. He can muscle that.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah.
But in the technical sense, there's still a lot that needs to be there. So, using the drills that you're the worst at, that's important. And our jump to stomach drill is one of the most important drills we teach.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids, I don't understand why. And we're pretty anti pop-up drill, where you just pop up and you stay in that position, you flop.
Right.
So we teach you jump and you swing and you land on your stomach. Why the jump to your stomach as opposed to the pop-up? Well, in the jump to stomach, you're emulating more of the pole vault than you do in the pop-up.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do more in the turn to your stomach drill than you do in the pop-up. And so the more you learn in that drill, the better of a drill we believe it is.
I agree. Now we're delving into technique, which is fine. I agree with you. That pop-up or invert drill that people do, it's very easy if you're not careful watching for it to be done wrong, but still be good job, because you can kind of just push, lean back and force the invert, especially if your grip is very low. And so you're not very active, you know what I mean? You're just leaning back to get that invert. Whereas like you said, that swing to your stomach, we call it swing to the belly, but you're active through the whole time and you really have to push off. Like I even talk about certain marks on the mats. Like if you land here, you know what I mean? That kind of should equate roughly to this kind of jump. If you land here, it could equate to that kind of jump if you fix everything else down the runway. But it's like, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, in terms of the technical aspect of it. I mean, look, how many drills are there in the pole vault? You go on Instagram and you just follow every pole vault club out there. Mm-hmm. Every single person is doing something a little bit different. Mm-hmm. There's not a problem with that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a problem with that. Mm-hmm. It's just we're all doing something a little bit different, trying to achieve the same somewhat result. Yeah. And so we all have different methods to the madness and how we teach it. So it's kind of too like we had a confrontation with a coach at one point about the pop-up drill. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, Sergey Bubka does the pop-up drill. I said, okay, well, yeah, but what was he trying to do? Was he trying to get in that position? Or was he trying to get his step? Or was he trying to get his left hand in a place or a position? Was he trying to get his legs? What was he trying to do? We don't, if it's not what you do, it's what you're trying to do.
Right. Yeah.
Because I do a lot of things as a coach, but am I trying to do them all the time?
Right.
Not necessarily. It's what you're trying to do that's important. That's what we believe.
Well, and I think a lot of times what's difficult is when you try to just emulate, and again, I think in pole vault we do this a lot. We look at a still frame picture and we're like, oh, I need that. That's what I want to do. But who knows? You might go up to the athlete that's in that picture and go, "Hey, Sergey, is this the position I should hit?" And he might be like, "Oh, actually, that was the bad part. I didn't want to do that. That was a mistake in the drill." So you don't know without discussing it with the person who was doing it. So if you just try to chase a certain picture, that might not even be a desirable picture to the person who was doing it. The other thing, and I think about this a lot, and again, putting your educator hat on, let me know what you think about this. There's a strength and conditioning coach in the New England area, and he talks about coaching in the terms of like cooking. You have a cook, a sous chef, and a chef, right? The cook has to follow recipes to the T. They can't make any adjustments, and they take orders from the sous chef. The sous chef has been a cook long enough that they can make alterations to a recipe. They know if they add a little bit of salt, a little bit more salt here, or they take a little flour out or whatever, they can mess with the recipe somewhat if they don't have the right ingredients and still get a good meal, right? But they take orders from the chef. The chef has been around so long that they now create recipes, right? They create the menu, right?
Yep.
And this is what I think. I think sometimes when you start out as a coach, you jump into that sous chef section too early and you start doing a la carte. Like, ooh, I like the drill from PV Atlanta. I'm going to take that drill. Ooh, I like the drill from Earl Bell. I'm going to take that drill. Oh, I saw Apex put this. I'm going to take, well, you just a la carted stuff that you might be mixing like whipped cream with steak. Like this is going to taste horrible. And I think first you have to follow recipes to the T before you start making adjustments. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. We have a system. You have to teach with a system. Education, coaching, you have to have a system in place, and you have to stick by your system. You have to be firm in your beliefs with it. And that goes with everything. How the kids conduct themselves at practice, what they are allowed to wear and not wear at practice, language that's allowed and not allowed at practice, drills that are done and not done at practice, everything. I mean, the list goes on, but you have to have a system. How are you going to teach the run? How are you going to teach the plant? How are you going to teach your apparatus drills? Basically everything that's not on the runway apparatus. Those drills. How's your system in place? Now, why is your system that way? Right. What are you basing your system off of? Okay, what results are you trying to get from that system? So it all has to come from that. Now, I will fully and openly admit, I am not the same coach. Again, I've been doing this for 15 years now as a coach, and I've been with Hal at Pole Vault Atlanta. This will be my 9th year. We do not coach the same way we did 9 years ago when we worked together. 100%. The system is somewhat the same, but we have modified and made changes and found out what's worked more, what hasn't, and introduced things, and then those things have become permanent. And then gotten rid of things that we felt like were now elementary, or we can move past this or teach us in a different way. Right. And that's the concept of, if you're coaching out there, you've got to have a system that you can fall back on a sheet of paper or something that says, this is what we're doing and why, and these are the things we're trying to achieve in it, and these are the expectations. But yeah, the a la carte system thing, like Sam Kendricks is a great example. And I mean, he's the American record holder. He's on 490 poles, right? I mean, he's on 490s. He's the American record holder. He's got like a 4-foot push off. Okay. Yeah. What I think a lot of us are thinking about when we think of him is, God, his push off is insane. But have we ever thought about why he starts the run the way he starts it? Is that taught? Is that allowed? Is that a comfort thing? Is that simply a rhythm thing? I'm not knocking it. Please don't think that, well, I don't want anyone else to be like, that coach from Atlanta, he's just knocking on everything. I'm actually not, I don't think in that critical lens like that too often. I actually look at everything that every other coach does and that every athlete does, and I honestly think, what are they trying to do? Was that taught? Is that something natural to them? Or is that something that is it a comfort thing? Or is it something that's overlooked and they don't even know it? Right. Those are massive things in the pole vault. When we go to New Balance and JOs and high school meets, I don't really watch a lot of other kids when they're jumping per se from a technical aspect, but I look to see like, okay, What does it look like? What do I think they're trying to do? Oh, what pole is that? What's the grip? Where are they running from? How many lefts? They got a mid mark? No, they catching takeoff or mid mark. Is someone standing over there? They have someone like you have so many variables right there.
Right. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, in a good way, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But absolutely, it's the system standpoint that you have to have it. And if I had to offer any advice to the younger coaches or the newer coaches or the club coaches that are maybe trying to find out a system, is that look at the people who are beating you and then find out how are they beating you? What are they doing that's beating you? And there is nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong with asking someone else, hey, man, what are you doing? I mean, what's going on? Tim Riley is the epitome of the example. Tim Riley's always had very good pole vaulters. Mm-hmm. It has been of more recent. His girls are just dominating the pole vault.
Right.
Okay, Tim, what's going on? What are you doing?
Right.
What do you get? And he explains a lot of this stuff. He doesn't.
Well,
there's no bullshit.
I loved his YouTube live session that he did, because out of all of them, I was like, wow, this guy has his process and his system down pat. And again, to reiterate, I guess what I was trying to say too is like, if you're a beginner coach, you can't just take one of his processes or procedures or drills and then mix it with someone else's. Like you brought up Sam Kendricks. It's like, you can't just take his push off and add someone else's carry. Maybe there's a reason, like you said, for all of that to fall in place and allow him to have that push off. We may not know. I mean, like, I'm not standing next to them when they're training. I have no idea, And right. I'll tell you, as a young coach, something that I feel like I coached started coaching at a great time. Because when I started out, literally that first year, I remember going to like Kinko's FedEx and literally just printing out everything from the internet and making my own spiral wrap books.
I'm not leaving. I'm listening.
No worries. And I remember like going through the books and I'm like, oh my God, I felt like I had to cherry pick drills, but yet then Beginner to Bupka came out. And exactly.
Bible. I mean, it's the Bible.
Right.
We've been given the word of God himself. Thomas, Alan Launder and Bupka and Petrov. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, and going back to the cooking analogy, once I got Beginner to Bupka, it was like, I tried out one of his recipes. I'm like, wow, that worked. I try out another recipe. I'm like, that worked too. I'm like, I'm just going to do the whole cookbook now. And the thing is, the more I followed that book and that system, the better my athletes became. And what I would also warn young coaches or people trying to develop a system is you can't try it for a day, a week, even 2 weeks. You have to really kind of go through a season, see how it works out. Going back to teaching, it's like teaching a unit. You can't like 1 week into your unit be like, I'm changing everything. No, you got to teach that unit and then kind of reflect back and go, how can I make this better next time?
Right. How many teachers taught by PowerPoint only in the early 2000s? And that was the greatest thing that we thought we had as educators at one point was PowerPoint. Right. And then YouTube. And then we thought that was the greatest. And there's always something that's changing. There's always something developing. There's always something that is going to be a variable in your educational and your coaching life. And so it's how you handle those variables and what variables you choose to make the independent and the dependent, which right. ones are you going to, this is the dependent variable. It stays the same no matter what. However, I'm going to change this. We're going to do right. this for 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months, whatever. And you go from there. We teach the plant differently now than we did a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. And it's just based off of, we watched a lot of video. We watched a lot of video of pros. We watched a lot of video of elites. We talked to other coaches and we thought to ourselves, let's reread Beginner to Bupka. And we kind of had like a little revelation. Mm-hmm. It was an aha moment.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, and kind of going back to your analogy of like in the classroom, whether it's PowerPoint, YouTube, whatever the new thing is, what I think is as you go through that stage of being, just a cook and following recipes, and now you start to go into becoming a sous chef, what I find is amazing, then you start to blend all those things together. You know, it's like you don't just get rid of the PowerPoint. There's still going to be some valuable PowerPoints that you can use. There's going to be a moment to bring in a YouTube video, just like as you're coaching. You know, it's like maybe that drill you did 10 years ago, yeah, maybe you don't do it all the time, but there's still going to be those moments where you're like, aha, okay, with Johnny, we need to implement this drill that we don't normally do because he's one of these cases, you know?
Absolutely. You find it's like you're the doctor, and then all of a sudden you've got all these illnesses in the pole vault that are coming out, like late plant, steps are off, under, out, kid goes to the right, kid goes to the left, pole bend too low. All right, well, here are the different things we've tried with these kids to fix these issues, and you know, sometimes one thing works, sometimes it takes 7 things to work.
Yeah. Look, and I mean, I feel like we got to talk about one of the topics that we planned on talking about. I feel like we could go another hour on this. But I just, again, I think it's so important. If you're a coach, you've got to start delving into like some education knowledge. You know, you are an educator. Like I always laugh because people will ask me every once in a while, they're like, hey, Bronco, would you ever go back into teaching? Because I started out as an English teacher. And I go, well, I never stopped teaching. I just teach pole vault now instead of English, you know? But it's the same thing. You have to educate someone in this skill, you know? And if you don't understand that, you know, pole vault is a lot more complicated than upper grip back a half. I know everybody loves to joke about that. They're like, oh, that's easy. You just go upper grip back a half. That's all they did. And it's like, no, you had to teach someone how to do this skill and everything else that we discussed, you know, making them patient, disciplined, dealing with failure. You know, these are all things that you have to set up a certain procedure, process, and systems to get an athlete from point A to point B, you know? And I think that's it. We try to oversimplify our events sometimes, and we don't understand how much there really is going on, you know?
Yeah.
Go now, kind of like to talk about this other topic, you know, states are starting to reopen. You're in Georgia. You guys have reopened. Which
we're all over the news now. You want to talk about Georgia's crushing it when it comes to being on the news right now.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to ask too, because I think reopening means so many different things in so many different states and countries. When they say Georgia reopened, walk us through that, and then maybe can you tell us what you guys plan to do starting practices again? Because I know even myself as a coach, I've been thinking about this for weeks now, you know, and how I can reopen, if I should reopen, you know, and all those types of things. What's going on in Georgia?
All right, so the governor has issued that so state parks have been open the entire time. Everything's been social distancing. Takeout restaurants have pretty much been open the entire time. Some are doing better than others. That's obvious. So gyms are starting to reopen. Tattoo parlors, for reasons unknown to me, but that's fine. Mm-hmm. Movie theaters to an extent, malls. I mean, things are going back to normal-ish. Mm-hmm. You know, and I walk down the street. I live off of a main street in Buckhead, which mm-hmm. is just outside of Atlanta, and people are going to Orange Theory classes again. People are going and sitting at the bar at the taco places again. Okay. And Target, you know, like things are opening up. Things are out there now. Wearing a mask, hand sanitizer. I can't go to the grocery store. If I go to a Trader Joe's, they have to spray hand sanitizer on my hands, and then, you know, like they only let so many people in the grocery store. But when I go to the wing place over here, they take my temperature, and then they actually put a timer on just to see how long people have been in the environment. I mean, It's all different.
Yeah.
So in terms of the way we're approaching the opening is it's cautious and considerate. Mm-hmm. So we have to understand that we have just as much control over its spread as everyone else in the state, because it's all based off of the choices you're going to make. Mm-hmm. So we have to think about the following. You know, our kids going to have to wear masks when they come to practice. Not while they're jumping. I mean, it'd be kind of hard to run down the runway breathing in the mask. You need to hyperventilate. You pass out at your third left. Yeah. So wearing a mask is probably not going to be something that's done. Kids are going to bring their own chairs to sit on, and they have to use their own chairs for everything. So your bag doesn't sit on the bench anymore. We'll set up a bunch of tents around the area where you can, if it's sunny and whatnot. But your bag's got to be in your stuff has to be in your bag and has to be in your chair. Mm-hmm. Parents, parents used to sit along the track and just watch. They got to be outside the gate now. The less people we have at practice, the better. Mm-hmm. We're also doing boys only, girls only practices. We have 3 pits, 2 go in one direction. We're on the apron of a track.
Okay.
Our sand pit is at the complete opposite end of the track. It's also on the apron. And so the apron with the 3 pits, our elite pit and our ding dong pit, as I used to say, or as I like to call it, they go in the same direction. They're about 10 feet apart at most, runway wise. And then our goofball pit, second pit, goes the other direction on the same apron. So by having boys only, girls only practices with our club kids of about 70 kids, we did the math. We looked at their PRs and where they fall. We looked at what kids would be on what pits. We also then thought about what poles would even be shared too, between the kids, boys and girls. We got girls on 14 160s.
Right.
I mean, we got a lot of boys on a 14 160, but if we don't have them at practice together, they separate. They're using the different equipment, or the same equipment but different days.
Right.
So we're going to operate girls only on one day, boys only on the other day. Practice sessions are 2 hours long, and we're emphasizing you come in, you get to work, and you go. You don't need to socialize and goof off while you're at practice. If you kids want to go out and do whatever the second you leave the gate, that's fine. But when you are inside that gate, we're an outdoor practice facility. Mm-hmm. When you come in that gate, you're in work mode, and get to work and let's go, because we're out here for you, but you're also out here because you want to get better. Right. So, and we're also saying to the kids, don't go in the shed and take out 7 poles at the same time.
Right.
You don't need to take out the 12-foot pole, the 14-foot pole, and then your 3 15-foot poles.
Right.
You don't know. You don't know what you're going to take. So the less you touch in there, the better. Right. Get what you're going to use right now. Mm-hmm. And then use it, and then ask if you can move up or if you can move to the next thing. Right. So that way we limit the amount of kids just touching everything.
Yeah.
We're also going to ensure that the parents know that they are assuming responsibility when they send their kids to practice. That they are understanding that they are assuming the risk liability when they come to practice of possibly exposing their kids. Mm-hmm. And insurance-wise, we can't really attest to covering that. We have a private insurance company, and we also use USA Track and Field Insurance. Right. So USA, through the club system. And so we're looking at that. We're looking at it through that extent. But we're also making sure that the parents understand, you and your family have to make the decision you believe is best for you. Yeah. We are not forcing you to come out. If you don't feel safe to come out, then contact us. We'll discuss it. But we aren't a club system that can operate with private lessons with groups of 5 or less on all these different days at all these different times. It just doesn't make up, because we're also renters. We rent a facility. Right. And so we're renting an outdoor track. So we have to follow by what our renters say is okay as well. And they're a school, and they are following educational guidelines. So there's a lot more variables. I think parents and athletes are unfortunately neglecting to understand that they only see that we are either sending them information that says we are having practice and this is the guidelines, or we're not open yet and here are the guidelines for right now. They don't see that we get emails from USA Track and Field every other day. Right. That we're getting emails from the place we're renting from once a week. Yeah. And that we are sending emails to our insurance company, and that we're also in contact with USA Track and Field officials, and we're checking the websites to see what's canceled and what's not, because that makes us readjust our calendar. Our big thing is we're training for New Balance Outdoors right now. However, we are, as coaches, I don't like to say this, but I have to be realistic. Yeah. We're planning on not going until the last second we know it's happening. So we're also training our athletes to understand we may not be going to New Balance. We may have an inter-squad meet that weekend.
Yeah.
So we're going to do what we feel is best in our training to get ready for New Balance, but the fallback is an inter-squad meet.
Yeah, I mean, I've even last night I started a discussion with one club coach where he was talking about doing like virtual club meets, like do a Zoom, video. We
Yeah.
could watch each other jump and, take jumps. And, I think people are going to have to start getting a little bit creative during this time period. I know that even for someone like me, where it's an indoor club, right? I also rent my space. So, I've talked to several different people, several different situations. Obviously, things that you could do is like limit numbers. Now that kids are not in school, you could probably have more practice times, right? So maybe start practice even as early as 8 a.m., run till 8 p.m. There's things that people can do. I think some of the things that people maybe are concerned with, one, I know for me as a club owner is like, can I get enough disinfectant spray, especially being an indoor facility, because I'm going to have to spray down the poles. I'm going to have to spray down the mats. I was even thinking about one thing that I could do is, having half-hour buffers between sessions. So that way I have half an hour to maybe do some cleanup. And because I have 2 pits, I know, and look, for everybody who's listening who maybe is in this situation, if you have 2 pits, one thing that's nice is you maybe can just spray down the mats you're using and then use the other set of mats for the next practice. That way you give time for that mat to dry off,
Right. And then that actually entertains the possibilities of like, okay, you're going to we're all hypothetical in all of this.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to clean the mat and we're going to clean the poles. All right. Well, the grips are now going to get messed up. That's more athletic tape and chalk you need. The pads might not be, the material isn't necessarily designed for alcohol spray and disinfectant spray to be on it X amount. So then the pads themselves deteriorate.
Yeah.
Pole vault equipment isn't cheap. So we don't have a pole vault fairy who's going to come in and be like, oh, we fixed the top pad for you. You're all, like, it's just, you've got to, we need to understand that this is teaching us that we have to kind of also go outside of our comfort zone a little bit. But also we have to take into consideration that what do you really want out of it? And are we how long are we going to live in some fear and some discomfort? And, everyone's going to start back and they're going to start back uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's going to be the first new normal. Is that we're all going to go back uncomfortable. Excited, but uncomfortable for a minute.
Well, one of the things that I think about too, Matt, is, like you said, people are going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be different. I think as a pole vault club owner, I'm trying to make people as comfortable as possible. One of the things that I'm going to plan on doing too is you take people's temperature before they walk into the building. Obviously, if the temperature's too high, they can't practice that day. We ask, obviously, if anyone is exhibiting symptoms to not come to practice, that sort of thing. Also, make sure the bathroom is clean. People should wash their hands before and after using the poles. These are things that people themselves have to be more vigilant. We'll have, hand sanitizer available, but people have to be vigilant on their own. The other thing that I think also, which I don't like during this time period, is some people are getting super judgmental. I think we all have to make choices. We all have to make choices that we're happy with. But like I saw someone tweet out, they were like, oh my God, I can't believe people are willing to risk their lives for going to the gym. And you know what I asked those people? Cool. Well, when the restaurants and bars open up in your town, are you going to risk your life to go to the bar? Because I'm sure some of those people are, and it's like, and here's the thing, I don't judge, everybody takes on risk every single day of their life. I mean, I listen to Joe Rogan podcast and he brings this up. It's like, you could die in a car accident, but you drive your car, And so it's like, we all make choices for the things that we want. I mean, how many people go hiking right now, and they may or may not be wearing a mask going hiking. Now, me personally, prior to coronavirus, I'm not a big hiking guy. I don't like the outdoors all that much. But to me, it's like, if that makes you feel good and you want to go do it, you should go do it. That's your choice, And if you want to come to pole vault practice, come to pole vault practice. Just obviously take precautions. I mean, I'm sure you'll agree with this, but when you go to the grocery store, first of all, I've never seen going to the grocery store as an enjoyable experience. It's something you have to do, right? You have to go pick up food. But it's like now during these times, it's even tougher. Sometimes you have to stand in a line. You have to wear a mask now, and you have to take more precautions going in and leaving, washing your hands. I've even just like taken my clothes off, throw it into the washer and go take a shower. These are precautions that we're going to take. And I think as time continues to go on, we're going to be making choices about things that, there might be a little bit of risk, but I really want to be able to do this because I don't think anybody wants to just sit in their house 24/7,
Right. Yeah. And I think, I mean, I would surely hope, and I firmly believe that we all, as coaches out there, whether you're in Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Texas, wherever, Washington, New Jersey, New York, wherever, I do think that we as coaches, as clubs, or whether we just give private instruction or whether we work at a high school and we're the volunteer coach, I firmly believe that we are all taking into consideration what is best for me, what is best for my athletes, what is the best situation so that everything can be safe.
Right.
I just think that we're all in such different places geographically, politically, economically, socially, that we all have very different approaches, but with the same intentions. Mm-hmm. You may be a club and he'll know who I'm talking about. You may be a club in the middle of Rock Hill, South Carolina. Mm-hmm. His clientele numbers are not going to be the same as those of Los Angeles.
Right.
So the proximity, the different factors. You may be in Florida and have a pole vault set up in your own compound in your own house. Or you may have a barn in Texas, or you may have your own setup outside in the swamp area. Like, we all have such different setups,
right?
And we all pull from different numbers. And whether it's urban, rural, whether it's more of an inclusive or exclusivity type of system, mm-hmm. We all just need to really, and I do think we're judging each other, and it's unfortunate because I really do think we need to put the anxiety and the anger and the frustration aside, because we're all uncomfortable and disappointed right now. Athletes, coaches, parents, kids, every single person is disappointed.
Yeah.
Hands down. We're all upset. We're all frustrated. We're all ready for things to be different. We're all waiting for things to be different. We all want things to be different. But we don't have control over everything. And we just have to make the best with what we're being given. Yeah. And we have to make the decisions we feel are the most appropriate for ourselves. Yep. And if you don't feel comfortable coming to practice because there'll be 20 other kids spread out on 3 different pole vault pits, then have a conversation with the coach.
Yeah.
But no coach is out there to get anyone or to cheat to get the extra step ahead. Right. I just don't see that happening. And I just think that it's going to be a slow, steady process. Once the clubs start opening back up, we're going to start opening up on June 3rd. Mm-hmm. And it's before practice, we're going to get there to evaluate everything, every scenario. Right. The coach and I are actually meeting today at 3 to talk about what we're going to do the first 2 weeks of practice. And then we're going to meet the second practice ends to write down what went well, what didn't. I think what this is going to do, I think this whole pandemic and this crisis is going to do for us as club coaches and as high school coaches and athletes and parents is it's going to make us think about where the value is in what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And it's going to make us think about the decisions we make on a slightly different scale in terms of making more decisions with purpose rather than simply going about our ways to just go about our ways.
Mm-hmm. No, I think people are going to be way more conscious of the decisions they make as athletes, as coaches, as business owners. I know even for me, look, I'll be honest. There have been definitely times where I'm like, okay, what do I do if I cannot reopen? What if this is not feasible? Because some of the things that I think about even as a business owner is, I mean, unemployment is through the roof. How many people are going to be able to afford pole vault lessons, and I totally understand that. Look, I unfortunately have heard things from gym owners. This is not pole vault, where they're telling clients like, oh my God, if you don't keep your membership, we're going to have to go out of business. Dude, that person might be worried about putting food on the table. They shouldn't care about my business. I don't think it's anybody's responsibility to think about my business.
Right.
I, of course, am very grateful. I mean, I have people that have reached out to me. They love the club. They want to see the doors open again, and I'm grateful for that. But I don't want anyone to ever worry about my business. That's my responsibility,
Right. And the people that want you to be successful and that are going to want to be with you and that are going to stick by your side and help you out are the ones you really want in the club system with you. And those are the ones you're going to want that will be out there to bat for you.
Sure. Yeah. 100%. And I think, look, I think if you make it clear that you're trying to do the best for everyone, that's going to shine through. People are going to see that. They're going to appreciate that. I don't think you ever have to pressure anybody into doing anything. That's always just been my way as a coach. Like, I don't want to have to try to convince you to come to my club. You either want to or you don't, so yeah, it's going to be a difficult time. And I think people do need to think about what they're going to do, how they, what is their plan of action for reopening? Are you going to check temperatures? Also, like you said, different situations, indoor versus outdoor. I think for my club, reopening, masks will be a part of it. We're going to have to wear masks. Maybe as things evolve, like you said, every day, after you finish a practice, after you finish the first week of practice, maybe it does become apparent that, okay, maybe the person jumping can take their mask off and then put it back on once they get back online. There could be rules like that, but we have to start thinking about these things. And obviously, I tend to be positive. I think as things continue to move on and continue, I think things will continue to open up. We have to be able to make choices. We have to be able to try to get back to some type of normalcy,
Yeah. And I think we also, and this is more of a challenge to all the coaches, is I think we also should be transparent and we should be informative in our community of what our plans are. I mean, I love following. I'm in charge of our social media stuff with the Instagram and Facebook. And one of my favorite things is following all these other clubs and coaches all over the country and seeing what they're doing and seeing the success, seeing the goofiness, and then seeing the serious mode of it. And I really would challenge all of us as coaches to also put out there on our social media and put out there on our websites and be open and say, here are the guidelines we're using and this is what we're doing. And also welcome feedback, not criticism.
Yeah.
So let's open that up and then say, this is what our guidelines are going to be. And we've posted ours on our Instagram account, so you can see it there. And I welcome any coach and any athlete to say, hey, read this. What are your thoughts on X, Y, Z? So it's the more you know, the more you're informed, the better decision-making you can make. And I think that that's what we are all as a community wanting to do is we want to better the community. And the best way we can better ourselves and our clubs is by remembering that we're all in this together. And so I do challenge all the coaches and clubs to say, hey, here's what we're doing. And we would love any feedback. So that way we can all kind of see,
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, kind of, and maybe we can go back to some other topics too, but I think that's so true in the pole vault community is that we sometimes I feel like people are afraid to say what they're doing because they don't want criticism. They're so worried that, oh, if I post how I'm reopening, maybe someone will tell me I shouldn't reopen or that's not good enough. And even when we talk about technique, oh, if I post this drill, someone's gonna be like, well, that's trash, And the thing is, I think if you're a coach, you're supposed to be a leader, right? And as a leader, you don't worry about criticism. I mean, you might listen, you might say, okay, maybe that person has a point. you know? But I think as a leader, you can't be so torn apart by someone criticizing you. You have to be open and say, hey, listen, I do believe in this. This
Yeah.
is what we're doing, you know, as far as reopening. This is what we're doing as far as technique or drills at our club. I believe in this. I
Yeah.
should believe in this whether or not Matt Barry comments and goes, Bronco, that's really terrible. You should do this instead. You know, it's like, if that's all it takes to make me cower, you know what I mean? It's like, what kind of a leader am I, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Even going back to this situation, I think being a good leader as a coach through this situation of coronavirus is huge. If your athletes see you panicking, if your athletes hear you have anxiety, or you know, how will your athletes react? You know, I remember speaking to Mike Lorick. He had he has the number one guy in high school right now. His boy, I think, jumped 17.3 or 17.4 at Reno.
Yep.
They're out in California. I forget the athlete's name, but anyway, point is, I remember talking to Mike, and he said, listen, like, you know, we would have liked to go on to indoor nationals. We would have liked to have a chance to win the California state title, but he goes, you know, I know the kid's first name is Scott. He goes, I spoke to Scott and I said, hey, we're lucky that we got that Reno in and that you got that mark. You know, you could have had a bad day at Reno. So there is something to feel fortunate about. And I feel like, you know, as leaders, we have to constantly be in that mode. And I think going back to what you say, hey, yes, we should be posting what we're doing when we decide on how we're reopening. We should be posting, and I'll go even further. We should be posting our techniques, our drills, our systems, our progressions, because it helps the whole sport grow. Because the more information out there, like we brought up, you know, beginner to book before. I can't imagine what my career as a coach would be like today if that book was never written.
Yeah, mine would have been short. my career as a coach we wouldn't be having this podcast right now. Yeah, no,
I don't, like you said. I mean, I think you bring up a good point. Would I even be coaching right now? Because that book was so influential. So the more that people share, and listen, I know Alan got a lot of criticism when he wrote that book, but the thing is, for every criticism, he also had people that loved him. And I think sometimes what's unfortunate is people who are real happy and love what you're doing, they're not always going to comment. It tends to be the haters that comment. You just have to know as a leader that that's what's going to happen. You just don't worry about it, you know?
Yeah. I do think this, is, it speaks to that. One of my favorite things in the pole vault community is that all of these kids, all these athletes follow each other on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. And they all are supportive of each other when they see so-and-so does a PR, or if so-and-so, you know, attempts a PR, or if they break a barrier or whatnot. And I do hope that we get to a point again soon where we're posting stuff on our social media again. Mm-hmm. And we are all, whether you're in Texas, California, Idaho, New Jersey, New York, South Carolina, Florida, that we're all back on it going, it's so nice to see you guys are back open again. Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah.
Great jump. Glad to see smiling faces. Stay safe. I mean, those things.
Yeah.
I hope that we get back to everything opening up back again, however time is, however long it takes. Mm-hmm. But that's what I want to see us as leaders and coaches and athletes challenge ourselves with, is to be how good can you be?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, that kind of brings up the point of promotion, right? We need to promote each other. I think sometimes we get it's funny. As a sport, sometimes we don't show that competitive side. We like to promote our sport by being like, oh, we're all just jumping against the bar. But yet we get so competitive as coaches and clubs, you know? But it's like, we actually have to promote each other more. I love competition at competitions, but I think we need to promote each other, and that's how we grow. Right. A little bit of shifting gears. I know a while back, this might have been like a year and a half or something like that. I remember getting a DM from you guys about something that I posted technique-wise. I'd love to get your thoughts a little bit about technique on the bottom arm. How do you guys view the bottom arm? And, you know, maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Okay. So it was a drill you had posted where the kids are using the bottom arm. They're pulling down the pole to get further in the pit. Mm-hmm. I believe that was the nature of the drill, or at least, again, it's not what you do, it's what you're trying to do. That's what we thought the athletes were trying to do. And so bottom arm action in the pole vault, from a technical standpoint, from what we believe, your bottom arm initiates the pull through the turn, and it allows and it enables the ability to push off at the top. So if you're not active with the bottom arm pulling through your face, pulling through the turn, initiating the where you're going over the bar, if you don't use the bottom arm, that's a crucial point of the pendulum that you're ignoring from a physics standpoint.
Yeah.
And that shows up on the push off drill. It shows up when you're jumping to your stomach, because in order to turn to get to your stomach, you have to use your arm action to get elbow out of the pole, elbow inside the pole to pull and land on your stomach. And so that's a crucial thing we think to the kids. But it also it's a way we also try to say it. It amplifies something else we're trying to get them to do too. Okay. So that they think, how active will my entire body be throughout the jump? I don't simply plant the pole bends, and I wait for it to recoil, and whatever happens, happens. It's you have 100% control over the action of the pole the moment you start running down the runway with it. And what you physically do with your body controls the pole, because the pole is going to react the same way you do something as someone else does something if it's the same exact motions.
Right. Yeah.
So it's dependent versus independent variable.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, it's funny. I remember listening to a jiu-jitsu coach, John Donaher, and he had this comment. He goes, why would you ignore 50% of the body? And it's something to do with jiu-jitsu, but I think it's so important in the pole vault like that to see the whole body and what should the whole body be doing throughout the entire vault. And I think sometimes people ignore things. Like going back to like Alan Launder's book, Beginner to Book Guy, I always felt like that was something where he didn't talk about the arms enough. He talked about the swing and the hips, and it was like, what am I supposed to be doing with my hands?
Right. What's the arm action involved in the pole vault? And I think some of us see different. I think we all, again, it's not what you do, it's what you're trying to do. So It's the same thing. What are you trying to teach? How are you trying to teach your body positioning? Some coaches emphasize more of, your top hand does a certain point of the drill, getting your top hand to your hip. Or some coaches say you row. So, I mean, the technicality and the terms are so different. Yeah. And they're explained however many different ways there are coaches. But again, it's what are you trying to teach the athlete to do, and if they are doing that or not, and then how do you teach them to do that? Yeah. One of the things we do is we stand on the side of the pit. We have the pole in the box. We're standing on the front pad, and we simply push the pole forward with our hands. We're holding low, and we just land on our butt in the pit. And then we go, okay, now I didn't use my left hand to do this action at all. So now I'm going to do the same thing. My top arm is straight. My bottom arm is going to pull. And then what you see is at first you landed here. And then the second time when you use your bottom arm, you landed here, deeper in the pit. Right. You don't want the pole vaulter to go up and then simply drop off. Right. It's a parabola. Yeah. And so the left arm action enables the parabola for the body to continue to move. Right. One of our kids jump with the standards deep almost routinely at 32. Our kids, if the standards are at 18, there are some issues going on, and there's something that's going on there. Right. And part of it is that we teach the kids to pole vault long. Right. Yeah. No, I think that, it's funny because I feel like that term pull, just the word alone, causes a lot of negative feedback for a lot of people in the pole vault community. And my thing is, if you don't recognize as a coach that on every single vault, there is some aspect of push, brace, and pull, every single jump, you're not watching it completely, and you're being dishonest, because I even think about situations like, look, I'm sorry, if you're running down, you're really super under and you get ripped off the ground, you literally have to brace. Otherwise you're just going to wash through the jump. Like you're just going to hips go past the pole. So it's like, you have to, as an athlete, be prepared to do all three of those things. And if you don't teach it in some sort of way, like I think that's such a simple explanation of like that swing to a sit drill. It's like, okay, do it without using your bottom arm at all. You're going to land at a certain point. You do it with the bottom arm, boom, you go deeper.
you can't tell me now. It's like, you shouldn't ever do that at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think when you track the numbers like grip and push off and so on and so forth, and look, I think once you start implementing it, one thing that I always tell people is not just how far your body goes. If you're active with that bottom arm and you pull, you're going to get the pull to move better too. You know,
Right.
I don't think people realize how much more grip you'll get.
Right. I mean, you want to move the pole. You
Yeah.
want to move the pole so that it takes you into the pit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really interesting thing. I'm always amazed, you know, and again, I think there's a lot of reasons for this, but I think sometimes it's an oversimplification of the vault. You know, someone sees, you know, a vaulter gripping 16 plus, you know, who's whatever, 6'4", and they jump and they see that perfect bottom arm and they're like, oh my God, how do I get Sally, who's 5 foot tall, you know, gripping 10 to have that perfect bottom arm? And it's like, well, is that really important right now? Like going back to what we said earlier, okay, we have beginner, intermediate, advanced. Well, how important is that aspect to a beginner versus being able to actively move the pole, actively swing? You know, once that 5 foot tall Sally maybe becomes a 5'8" senior, you know what I mean, in high school, the bottom arm will be there. You know, that's
Yeah. Or if the repetitions have showed up where she is worked on bracing, and then finally it clicks. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's clicked. It happened. It's
Right.
like we specifically say, we're not trying to teach you to bend the pole. How many times has someone bent the pole and you've seen the ambulance? How many times have you seen the pole bend? They go up and now they land, now they land in the box. Whatever. The world record for no one bending the pole is 15, 9 3/4 of an inch.
Right.
I know plenty of high schoolers and I know plenty of kids who would love to jump 15, 9 3/4 of an inch.
Right.
That was done with a steel pole. That was done at 19, I think it was 54.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we should teach that technical model, but I'm saying that you don't have to bend the pole. It helps. But
Right.
it's not taught. Again, not what you're doing. What are you trying to do?
Right. And I think when you try to incorporate things too early in development, right? Like, so let's say I'm trying to get the kid to bend the pole too early sometimes. And again, I think for me, watching Tim Riley's video, he showed a great way where he got kids to bend the pole on the first day, but teaching the whole jump. But sometimes you see other people try to do that and they're not teaching the actual jump and they're just getting a kid to bend a pole. You'll see, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this. It's like a 150-pound boy on a 1330 and they're gripping 12, jumping 10-6. And to me, I'm just like, oh my God, like what is going on, you know? So yeah, I just, and again, I like to look at the extremes because I think that's where you can kind of learn where you need to go with your process and procedure with things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, if this was easy, everyone would jump the world record all the time. And everyone would be able to bend the pole safely and land in the pit and everyone would be technically fine. It's not going to happen. Right. Sandy Morris has a video or a picture out there on her social media of what her first bar clearance looked like at a meet.
Right.
It was like, oh, Sam Kendricks too, going over backwards at like 5'6" or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, no one's arguing with those guys now.
Right. I think that speaks to what you said before. It's like we always see the positives, the wins, the big bars, but it's like everybody's got to take their lumps in the beginning. Nobody comes to their first pole vault practice and boom, just bombs a big jump. Like that's not going to happen.
Yeah, my favorite kind of technical joke now to ask people is, all right, so now that we see Mondo on a 17-something foot pole, I think he's on a 17.4. And he's sliding the pole in. He plants with his bottom hand, and he slides the pole in the last 8 to 10 inches on the runway into the box.
Yeah.
All right. Are we going to – our coach – I'm not saying we, but are people going to start to try now to teach that because he does it? Are we going to try to emulate that because he does it? But without knowing the true variable, why does he do it? Is that something his father taught him to do? Is it something he just does? Does he have to do it because he's holding it 17 feet and you can't physically hold the pole however many steps to go, moving the left? Like you see that 1 second split video, you see that split second video, tip hits 6 to 8 inches, 10 inches from the box. slides into the box, he jumps off the ground. That's what we see. What is he trying to do?
Yeah. No, I listen, I totally agree with you.
That's like the enigma open-ended technical thing right now.
I'm sure we could keep talking, but I know you said you have something to do. If somebody wants to follow you guys on Instagram or any other type of social media, how do they follow you guys? And would you be open to people reaching out if they have questions?
Absolutely. We're an open book at Pole Vault Atlanta, just Pole Vault Atlanta on Instagram. We don't have Twitter, but everything I put on the Instagram goes to the Twitter. And you would be following me on Twitter, which is Mr. Barry 628. And then we're on Facebook, and we have a website, pvatl.com. We have an instructional video that we did a few years ago. It needs a little bit of updating. That's on YouTube, PVATL instructional video. It's mainly for our beginners. And we're an open book. The first thing we say to kids and coaches when they show up at practice is the kids are learning how to pole vault. If you want to follow and listen, you can. Coaches, we don't charge coaches to come to we don't charge coaches anything. Yeah. We're an open book.
Awesome.
And that's just how we feel about it. And that's all. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate the time today and reaching out. It means a lot. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Yeah, I feel honored to have you on the podcast. I think there was a lot of great information for people. I knew this would be a great episode. For everybody that's listening or watching, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or our iTunes podcast. If you leave a comment or review, that would be awesome. You can email us at apexvaulting@gmail.com if you have any comments or questions. You can also follow us on Instagram at The Real Apex Vaulting and Apex Vaulting on Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, and TikTok. And thanks for listening, everybody.